that tune. So here we go.
Welcome everyone, I'm the Captain Ross Memphis Pambrun, and with me is the co-host and my friend, the President, Lawrence Gervais. We're broadcasting from Calgary and Region 3 of the Métis Nation of Alberta, which is part of the historic Métis Nation homeland. We would also like to acknowledge these lands are the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Kainai, Piikani, Tsuut'ina, and Stoney Nakoda, with whom we share this land on the basis of our historical and ongoing relationships. We would also like to say thank you to our First Nation friends, to the Métis settlements, and to the Métis brothers and sisters and families. We would also like to give thanks to our elders for their guidance and to Mother Earth for the time she allows us to be here to use her bounty. And now, folks, let's get the wheel squeaking. Welcome, folks, to the Squeaky Wheel. With me, as always, my friend, the President, Lawrence Gervais. Folks, I'm Ross Memphis Pambrun. Here on the Squeaky Wheel, we give you that weekly what's happening in the world, what's happening within the region community, maybe what's happening a little bit amongst the province, and we engage with all of our listeners to try and share conversation from a Métis perspective. So, Lawrence, I know people get to hear our stories all the time. We have a wonderful guest who's coming on our show who has some extensive experience when it comes to banging away at that rascal device that we might call the fiddle. Some people might call it a violin. But in our little community, I think that we tend to go a bit more of that energy, of that foot kicking energy, the fiddle, Alex Kusturok. So before we get to him, Lawrence, let's talk a little bit about what's happening in our province.
Yes. Well, I mean, vaccine is the big conversation now. We are moving into this rollout phase, working with Alberta Health and trying to get Métis Nation clinics and working with our friendship centers because they serve urban populations, and that's, who we are also. But no, it's been rewarding. I think, the meetings have progressed quite rapidly, and it's all about getting the vaccine, to those clinics, and number one, right? But if we can serve one to our Métis people, I know there's one in Edmonton that's planned on March 27th, and we're going to look at Calgary as the next location for a Métis clinic. And hopefully we can start doing that in probably April through that month. So.
Well, I know the federal government has promised quite a bit of vaccine coming. I mean, there's more groups that are providing it, the Pfizers, the Modernas. There's two other new groups that have come forward. AstraZeneca's been around. And I know that's sort of the one. There's lots happening in the world right now. I'm sure a lot that the anti-vaxxers are jumping on to, saying, oh, well, did you notice there was a batch over on the other side of the world and this is what's happening and we should stop it, even though millions upon millions of doses are being administered of it, and seemingly creating that protection because we're seeing such great numbers going down here for our people who are catching and our challenges within our healthcare system in the ICUs. So it seems as though we're moving in the right direction. It seems as though we're seeing the positivity declining, but we're also seeing strength within our community that people are starting to see. They've done the work. As long as we continue to try and keep doing the work as best as we can, we're going to see the light come at the end of the tunnel. And I hope people are starting to see that.
As long as Health Canada is doing their due diligence and making sure these things are safe.
Yeah. I guarantee, though, you've had a conversation with Dina. People, or their agency, our Alberta Health Services I think they're doing their work. And she's willing to comment and talk about it every day.
Yeah, that's right. And it's a very complex rollout in terms of through the Métis Nation. First Nations, it's fairly easy, it's cut and dry. But for us, we have a lot of self-identified Métis too that we have to consider. And how did that rollout pertain to them too? So.
And there's a bit of confusion when it comes to who and why and when. I mean, we've had it recently laid out that, if you're Métis above this age or older than this age, you can get it. And when you talk to 811, there's still a bit of confusion as to, well, it says I should be able to get it, but the province is still doing their job of saying, at this age, this is when you're allowed. And I know they're creating centers and sites everywhere, and we're increasing, right? We're starting to see that we're close to where the pharmacies are starting to allow it, and it'll get to the point where it's more like the flu vaccine where you could start to show up. But again, you're right, that rollout was a unique challenge.
Absolutely, and it still is. I think it's not over yet.
Yeah.
But the only
Yeah.
thing we can do is ask the right questions. I mean, they lower the age for Indigenous groups because of our health indicators kind of say that we're at risk too.
Yeah.
And so we understand that too, but then we have to act as nations ourselves to get those people to those sites and get those appointments made, right? So.
And that's right. So, folks, when you hear this and you listen to our Squeaky Wheel, make sure you reach out. Look online, AHS website. If you go to the Métis albertamétis.com, lots of information in there that you can glean that will tell you where the links are that you can start asking the questions. And again, our job here on the Squeaky Wheel is to try and share a lot of that messaging to say, folks, go out there and get your shot done. It'll help us get through this a lot quicker. Lawrence, what doesn't seem to slow down is, even though, we're patiently trying to sort our way through this, Constitution. So Lawrence, let's talk just a little bit about how, even though we're still trying to figure out our world of the vaccines, we're still moving forward on the Constitution.
Yeah, Constitution is, getting ready to unroll to our communities. That's the next step. And so there's going to be hearings that are going to be involved in all the regions now, so people can contribute there. And I encourage all members, because this is the time. It's not just roundtables. It's not just a few people. It's going to the members now, so they can see the draft, make their recommendations, and then hopefully we get to that second draft stage where this is what we heard document will come out, and they'll actually have something there tangible.
And I mean, you're elected into the position of the representation. I don't think it's meant. No, it's not that it's not meant for every citizen to understand every aspect, every step, every part. But yeah, when those frequently asked question reports come out, and what issues do people have, folks, that's your chance to engage. That's your chance to say, hey, for as much as I can and as much as I want, I'm listening, but help share that information with me. So folks, you're part of this as well.
Yeah, and our hope is to bring in Grant Britton, who's a Constitution expert. I mean, he helped work on the Canadian one in Ottawa, and he's now retired, and he's a member of Region 3. So we want to try to encourage our members to at least understand it. It's a very important decision. It's all about us becoming our own self-government. So we hope that we inform the members. They have the ability to ask us questions. As leaders, we should know a good grasp on what's going on. That's the most important thing. So we can convey to our members that this is the situation, and this is really theirs at the end of the day. This is their decision.
Yeah, this is our Constitution. It's all of ours. Yeah. Now, Lawrence, before we jump into Alex, one last thing. Sutter's back. And I'm talking the Calgary Flames. Now, he comes back and they all of a sudden win some games. I think he's it seemed like we were struggling there for a little bit, even though I think last name was Wade, who was our last coach. I should probably pay more attention. But we were starting to struggle. Cut our coach loose. Back comes Sutter. Now, are we just bringing in the same thing again, or is that experience that he has going to be what our players grab onto?
It's a revolving door. It's just like, I follow the Habs, and it's the same thing.
And I know when we start to see those changes within sports, a lot of times we go, well, is this just one more trick, one more card up the sleeve that somebody's trying to do? I think that our all sports players, even us in bands, there still needs to be that bit of leadership that says, hey, here's what we're providing. Here's how we're going to try and help. Here's us listening to you. Seems like with Sutter, that guy's got such a long tenure, such a long history. He garners the attention of us as fans. He garners the attention of those players. He garners the energy of the league, who says, boy, maybe we're lucky to have that guy back. And during this difficult time of trying to figure out who can move around, he had to wait before he could just run back and join the team. he still had to put his time out of the bubble in order to prepare. So glad to have him back. Glad to see the Flames getting stronger. And I love that rivalry here in the province.
Well, I mean, I heard he's really tough on players, right? He's like that Tortorelli guy. So we'll see how it goes. See how the players respond to that.
Well, he's definitely soft-spoken, so maybe he's tougher in a different way. But I'm delighted, and I feel like we're still so lucky that we're getting to watch hockey.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, Lawrence, let's take this opportunity to jump into bringing Mr. Alex Kusturok, our fiddle exemplifier, onto the show. And Lawrence, as we've been telling all of our audience, here we are. This is our opportunity to bring on the delightful Alex Kusturok. So, Alex, before we get into too much questions, most of our guests are quite familiar with Lawrence and I and our banter back and forth and our experiences, and they can often see a little bit about what's happening because of the such stuff that's behind us. And you have a delightful look that's happening in your room. And again, I've looked at your website. I've seen a lot of stuff. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump too much into the Alex questions that Lawrence and I have kind of put together. And I'm hoping you've got that fiddle close at hand so that we get a chance to get a feel for it. But let's talk just a little bit about maybe your background. And I know I'm quite confident that you're comfortable talking about your Métis background, just because of the music that I've heard and one of your albums that I know I do have in my collection. So tell us a little bit about your journey when it comes to that side of it.
Well, I am originally from Manitoba. My father is Treaty from Wabagoon First Nation in Ontario. My mom is Ukrainian, and she just got her Métis card in Manitoba about a couple years ago, and she had to go back for it, but she has it, and she very much plays that style of fiddle, like the Manitoba Boys, the Reg Bovet, the Andy Desjardins, kind of fiddle style to it. So me growing up, my mom was playing for dances every weekend. And, there's all these little surrounding communities outside of Winnipeg, and my mom would play at them all. So, I mean, before I could remember, before I could walk, before I could even play fiddle, I was going to these dances that my mom was playing at. And, from just a little kid to now, it's always just been fiddle. My life has kind of revolved around music, around fiddle. And when I met my dad a little bit later on, I think I was about 16 years old. I was having a chat with him, and he plays for the Seaweed Band. He plays for Ernest Monias whenever he goes out and plays still. So I kind of have music on both sides, right? So music has been a big part of my life from the very beginning, and it still is.
And I know that when I've listened to a lot of your music, there is the distinct influence of that kitchen party. And that's not fair to suggest that that's all the influence, but where do a lot of the other influences and your development come from? So it sounds like a lot of that came from your mom. Yeah. A lot of that has come from the connection with the culture. And Lawrence and I often talk about the idea of the Métis kitchen parties. The parties that you're talking about, or the Seaweed Band, were those kitchen parties as per se, or were they dances? And in a way, I'm still learning some of this too, because my dad was a bit of a musician. Mm-hmm. Lawrence's dad was a musician. My grandfather. So you start to see where some of these influences come in. But how do you differentiate the two of them, or is just you're playing wherever?
Right. I like to play, and I just put a video on my Facebook. I was sitting with my friend Tim Turrett, who produced my last album. He's a great guitar player, and I mean we played a show, and then we went back to his place, and we had a whole bunch of people there, and we sat in the kitchen, right? That is yeah. That is where the fun's at. That's where there's no more nerves, and it's that heavy footwork, and that's, you can see the house, and if you go back to the olden days, these little houses, you could see the house bounce, right? And yeah. that happens a lot still in Quebec, and our footwork, our Métis footwork, that is Quebecois thing, and the music of the Métis. We are influenced by, the Scottish, the bagpipes, and so when I grew up playing, there was that Métis style for the square dance, like first couple after that. But I listened to the Ashley McIsaac as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's where a lot of that aggressive attack comes from, right? So I'm a Métis fiddle player, and I can play those old tunes, and that feel is always going to be the backbone. But I like to incorporate a bunch of different styles into my playing while keeping that feel of the Métis, which it can't be taught, right? It is in the bloodline, and either you have it or you don't. And you speak of the kitchen parties. My mom would be playing tunes with people in the house, and when it was time for me to go to bed, they wouldn't quiet up. I could sleep through it. So I fell asleep to it, and a lot of the time I woke up to it as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a fiddle household too, and kitchen parties were always the normal, and all my uncles played. My dad was always just the accompaniment, played guitar, played bass, but it was always my uncles that played at the fiddle, Rainey, Gervais, and all them, and then going on to my grandfather, who used to pass a fiddle around too, because it was very precious to us, this little 3/4 fiddle, and JB Gervais was always known around Meadow Lake as being the fiddle player over there. But your mom with her YouTube, the 365-day challenge, and we see you on there where she plays a fiddle song once a day for 365 days, was fantastic. Actually, it didn't overlap into COVID. It was a little bit entertaining too at the same time. But your mother is very, very talented, Patty, right? So if you talk to her next, wish her well and say hello from all of us over here. And I want to thank you.
For sure, will do.
So as we start to adapt, and the artists it was hard at first, and even myself still sometimes struggle when I'll play a song for a whole group of people who are watching on Zoom, and you can't hear anything. You can't hear the clapping. I'm still playing for me, but I do know I get the energy from the people. And again, sometimes the clap is easy to enjoy. Now you've got to wave hands, or you got to shine your light into the camera in order for the artist. But I can hear your influences, that they're not just Métis, and that you garner the energy from all sorts of entertainers, and our strong entertainers, especially our fiddle players, the Ashley McIsaacs. As you move forward now with this journey, and sounds like we're starting to slowly open up, and you're going to get more opportunities to play outside. How have you been navigating this challenge during the pandemic when it comes to playing?
You know what? It's been, this pandemic hit us quickly, and we weren't prepared for it. I used to teach fiddle, 4 days a week, and then I would travel to go play on weekends, right? So, I mean, when it comes to Facebook Live and stuff, I'm lucky that Facebook has been a huge platform for us, and the music community between the Métis Nation of Alberta and a bunch of different musicians. I think we've created an atmosphere online, and people all around the world can enjoy the fiddle. And I mean, I've made a lot of new friends that I wouldn't have made throughout this pandemic. Made a lot more connections as well. It's forced me to slow down a lot. I really miss hopping in the car, heading down and playing. I was supposed to do a lot of that in the last couple of years, but I was looking forward to going back out there and making the connections. But at the end of the day, it's just, this is what we have to deal with. One foot in front of the other. Like we were talking before this, I invested in some mics, in some soundproofing. As you can see, I put out an album that you can see there. Just trying to do the best I can, just like everybody else. And the toughest part is not feeling that from the crowd, because that just gives it that extra little push that we need sometimes. Right. But it looks like we're heading in the right direction. And I can tell as soon as we can get together and play, it's going to be something special. It really is, and I can't wait.
I think this is the idea that the pandemic has affected all of us. Hence the reason is a pandemic. The idea that we're all affected, but how do we then recover? How do we, as you pointed out, and I always tout to everybody, this is your chance to slow down and reevaluate and say, what's important to me? What do I need to focus on? There was quite a while there where I went without playing my guitar. I probably went a couple months. And then some opportunities came about, and I realized if that is my passion, why am I not taking this opportunity, this sort of drought time as it is, to re-energize myself personally, right? Find myself when it comes to that. So I appreciate, I like to hear. I'm hoping that it opens the doors, at least for some of these people who have never wanted to try Zoom learning or Zoom education, that this is at least they're reaching out to you in order to try and prompt themselves to get re-energized. The fiddle's kind of one of those things that, you got the violin on the other side and you got the fiddle on this side, that all my friends over in Europe, when they hear that fiddle, it's the positive, the smiles, the energy. They feel like they're getting a chance to connect with a culture, with the Métis culture, or what they would just sort of consider Aboriginal or Indian, because they're not as familiar with our background and the specifics, but they get that energy. They get that driven positivity. And I think that's where that comes from. Now, before we get a chance to jump into wanting to hear you, I always love that artists always have a bit of a story when it comes to their instruments. Me personally, I always have an attitude of whatever guitar I'm holding in my hand for that period of time is mine. And when I have to give it back, I give it back. But you ever lost yours before? Does it really matter? Is it just whichever one is laying around, you'll pick up? Or do you have one that is so cherished and you chain it to your wrist because you can't let it go? Where do your instruments, where does that energy come?
It was no secret. It was no secret that I had a huge alcohol and drug problem in the past, and I'm, God willing, coming up on 2 years clean. So I used to leave my fiddles, my guitars, my coats. I think Lawrence has a coat of mine. I left it at a show somewhere. I've left my car. I've showed up to gigs and had to walk home. Yeah, so I mean, this fiddle here it's not the best sounding fiddle. I have yet to find the fiddle that I'm going to have until I'm 90 that I can pass on to my kids. With the pickup that I have in it, I think it's worth more than the fiddle is. And when I plug it in, I can turn knobs and make it sound, however I want. During this pandemic, like you said, I've practiced music and I've practiced tone, right? And I never practiced the fiddle since I was a kid until the pandemic, right? So I mean, to just practice your craft and to learn more tunes and to get the best tone out of your instrument and your craft, that in that way it's been a blessing. But the question was, have I lost things? Oh God, man, my fiddle cases and everything, just shirts, coats, everything, wallet. But as for the most part, I am an organized guy. Everything has its spot, and I would lose my head if it wasn't screwed on.
Well, and it's not the I'm familiar. There's lots of history when it comes to my awareness or understanding, or people in my life who I've known who have struggled through different types of, whether it's substance abuse or addictions. And if the person who acknowledges it and shares that information and is conscious, it's not for me to say that I'm proud of that person. It's that person's necessity to find that acceptance and pride in themselves. But that's a very positive. You have a positive outlook, Alex. That's fantastic. I'm I think that's great. 2 years, good for you. Finding yourself, finding that energy again. These are the reason I think we're successful on the Squeaky Wheel and that we have that conversation is because when we're trying to reach the youth and trying to reach and reconnect with our elders and make sure that people connect with family, understanding that we struggle. In as you identified, we struggle. We all struggle in different ways at different times. But there's a positive light there. There's a positive influence. Keep moving forward. And there's no shame. And as we move forward, we continue to find strength. So thanks for sharing that message, because I want people to be able to hear that and also hear that I've heard your music and it's fantastic and we got to keep that music going. And I love your story about the fiddle because, again, whatever I'm holding in my hand, I'll make that thing sound good. But I guarantee the search is always there for me to find a better guitar or a different banjo or something that's better. But that's part of the fun. That's part of the search. I think that's great. Lawrence, you got anything you'd like to comment there before we get Alex to I want to use the right term, I guess, just start driving that fiddle hard?
Well, I mean, I've, it's in our family. It's alcoholism, and struck my dad, and my dad was, quit alcohol when I was in my mom's belly. That's how long ago it was. But I mean, it's rampant in the music community, and it's because you spend their lifetime in bars playing music, and sometimes a paycheck is some booze, right? So, it was that's kind of how we grew up, and knowing that the music is so enriched and in our Métis culture and specifically in the rhythm of it and all that. And, you can even go back all the way to the fur trade and then putting in, on the canoe and getting the right rhythm and the oarsmen and keep going, right? And putting the fiddle player on top of that. It wasn't just a drum and they were beating. It was the fiddle music that kept them going, right? And the songs too, they would sing songs, while they're on these big ships, right? So, no, it's in our culture, it's in our DNA, and the music specifically, and to celebrate a kitchen party on a Saturday night after a long, work week for everybody and getting the families together, and that's what being Métis is all about, right? And this is our first fiddle player we've had in our podcast, so he's kind of hopefully not the last time he's here, and he can always come back. There's always an invitation for Alex to be here and bring his mom and bring all his accompaniment adventure. Eventually we can all meet together and do this as one big happy family.
Yeah,
right?
I look forward to that, the Squeaky Wheel party. So Alex, give us a little taste of or tell us a little bit about what you're planning on playing here. And then let us just sit back and smile while you drive that thing.
Okay. It was funny. I've had a week to think about what I was going to play. And I was more thinking about Zoom. And now I'm thinking, what am I going to play? So I'm going to play, I guess, an old French tune that comes from Quebec. It gets played a lot by the Métis players. It's on the new album Phoenix, and it's called Legrandus, and it's a tune which really lends itself to that fiddle and feet. And I was on APTN this past winter for the winter solstice thing, and I played one of my own tunes that I wrote. This lady from the Northwest Territories reached out to me to write a tune for her dad, and he liked fishing, so he wanted it to be called the Grandpa Yukon Fishing Reel is what he wanted. So I'm gonna play Legrandus swing into that tune. So here we go.
that was absolutely outstanding.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Lawrence, if you could just take that guitar behind you and smash it, because there's no way you and I are ever going to be able to compete with Alex there. That was delightful. The foot kicking, because you also teach the stomping too, don't you?
Yeah. So what I've been doing, is I've been pre-recording some lessons with the footwork, the spoons as well, which is big in our culture, and sending them to various Head Starts and schools and youth programs, and it's pretty much a 15-minute lesson of the feet, because like you mentioned, the kitchen party, even if people can't play the fiddle or the guitar, it's nice to be a part of it, right? And to have that. So we all need to be involved.
I remember being so young, and then somebody would pass me a set of spoons. And that was your first sort of awareness for me, where they teach you how to put the spoons in your hand and how to kick your leg up and how to let them hit each other and to ring with that energy. That's funny you'd mention that. Now, I guess one of the questions I have when it comes to artists is, sure, you can use your feet and you can play the fiddle, but why is it that as soon as you pick up one more instrument, you look like a doofus because you're walking around like a one-man band? You pull those two off, but it's always funny when I play harmonica and play guitar, and somebody says, "Well, why don't you kick a drum at the same time?" I'm not some clown act here. I'm actually this is not what I'm trying to do, but your footwork, the timing with the fiddle, oh, Alex, heartwarming, positive, nothing but energy.
But he also plays a mean waltz too every now and then, also to kind of break it up, right? So I think I heard your waltz on YouTube there, no, on Facebook, for it was to your wife or your girlfriend. I don't want to make that mistake, but anyways, it was a fantastic tribute to her, right, on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, and I'm sure that Lawrence can vouch for me, and his dad playing fiddle. I can't play the fiddle without tapping the feet. I learned how to tap the feet before I could play the fiddle. So it's hard. There's that driving force. There's that something, and that's what sets aside the culture as opposed to everything else. It's just that heavy beat.
Well, we might need this fiddle music opening up every podcast, because man, the energy's so great. Alex, where is some of the next direction that you're taking your music? I know we're going to start to see things opening up, but you're obviously invited to a lot of different opportunities. What are some of the ones that stand out, and where do you want to see, your opportunities, or is it continuing to build your repertoire of songs or continue songwriting?
Just want to play out, once we can. Like we touched on, there was a lot of years where, I don't remember being out, and I feel like a kid just wanting to go out, hop in the car and go, because I'll be meeting people, that I've met before, but to me, it'll be like meeting them for the first time. It'll be like playing these venues for the first time, right? I put out that record. I'm very proud of that record. I've mentioned it like 6 or 7 times since I've been here, but there's a bunch of Newfoundland guys playing on that, and it's a different sounding record for me. And we want to tour that. I want to bring those guys with me when I go and play. Because that's the new sound. And I mean, you can put those tunes. I think Lawrence and Region 3 used one of these tracks on a commercial that they did for a capote making thing. It's a French tune, right. But it can complement that. People can jig to it. People can square dance to it, right? And it's just I want to go out and play. I want these guys to come and play, and I want to make these connections again, right?
So all the youth that are listening out there, kids, this didn't just magically happen. This guy has trained. He has taken that time, and when you pick up that first instrument and you find the passion, and you see the idols, the fiddler idols out there, this is where you get started. So to all of our listeners, thank you. Alex, I guess one of the best places people can reach you is at alexkusturok.com. I know I'd read your bio, I'd gone through it. You know, I've shared your CD with my dad. He would have bought it too, but it was just easier to buy one. The don't worry, I'll buy the rest of them.
Burn it, rip it.
No, I'll buy the rest of them. I know what it's like to be a musician. I know it's like, so we're going to get more of them. Thank you for your time. Is there any last message you'd like to share here on the Squeaky Wheel? We've enjoyed the fiddle music. We're going to see more of it. We're going to continue to, we're going to continue to foster our relationships here on the Squeaky Wheel and Lawrence and ours connection with the community. Anything else you'd like to share before we let you go?
Guys, thanks so much for having me out with everything that's going on with the pandemic. Thanks guys for making this connection available, and that's what we all need during this time, even in an everyday life is that connection. So if we're feeling like we're not connected, pick up the phone, pick up the smudge bowl, right? Just keep that connection. We need that, and isolating for our people isn't the best thing to do. So please just stay connected. Thanks so much, boys. Love you all.
Thank you for sharing your journey. We very much appreciate it. We're going to end up chatting a little bit more, I guarantee, about you here when you go, and look forward to our next conversation, Alex.
Right on, guys. Thanks so much. Have a good one.
Okay. See you, Alex. Thank you.
Lawrence, it can't, all of our time on the Squeaky Wheel can't just be about the vaccine. All of our time can't just be about what Kenny's doing in politics. It can't all just be about, though it could be a lot about chuck wagons. I think that was one of the most enriching, energetic, positive things I've felt. Not just the music. The music was the energy. There was some familiarity between you and I about the history that Alex had, ended up talking a little bit about, and that challenge, that journey. That's something people need to share when they want to share it. Really seems like he's made so many great strides forward on his challenge, whether it's not unique, but for a guy with such strength as an artist and such exposure to addictions, or exposure to artists and the drinking and the relationship between the music and community, and how people would party. Wow. Isn't that so great?
Yeah, I mean, when he attracted a lot of attention on his A&E episode with intervention, and there was treatment plan with that, and he followed through, as you can see today. And I always believe in second chances and sometimes third or fourth, but it all depends on where people are at, right? And Alex has gone through his journey and to where he is now, and the pandemic has, probably helped him with a lot with the songwriting, and a lot with the practicing, and a lot of with getting the right sound, because that's their ultimate goal. They can do their 10,000 hours, and that takes about 10 years to really focus on something. But then once you become an expert, well, then you want to go to the next level. And I think Alex is starting to do that.
And when he gets his foot back out there in the community, when this opens up again, I only want to see success for that guy. Like his music is so fantastic. And I know the first time we saw him was at one of the events that you'd put on here in town, I think at the region office, and he'd come by. I think it was probably during Stampede, and that's where I bought that first CD from him. Realizing my awareness, my history of listening to sort of indigenous or Métis music, it wasn't very strong. Like Dad would listen to it, but I didn't always understand his connection at that time with the Métis community, or he didn't understand his connection with the Métis community. So I just sort of saw it as a bit of indigenous music, indigenous energy. Wasn't necessarily super familiar with it myself. But when I heard Alex there a few years ago, I'm like, this is so good. This is so fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, and for me too, I mean, I grew up around it, and then, jigging as a young child, and then going into classical ballet. And I always thought about that. Whenever they would, adjudicators would make comments about my hands, saying they're nice, but then they'd always comment and say that I was very rhythmical. I can get the rhythm pattern like right on the dot, right? So, having that background, or at least that knowledge of how music is and those bars are and how it's constructed, I think is the best thing that we've, for me professionally growing up and getting into dance, it was kind of like a perfect godsend for me.
Well, and you've got your family now getting involved in dance. And I think when they see your history, when they see your enjoyment, when they see the connection that you had with it at that time, that's only going to give them energy. Right. And I
only got into dance was to meet girls, right? Yeah. It was the best way to do that. And it was another Métis girl that invited me to the local studio, and that's how it all happened. I was going to go there and bring her to a movie, and then that was it. Right.
Yeah. And I think these are, and that's what I like about Squeaky Wheel, is that we're trying to bring people on who are always sharing a positive message, their passion, their connection with the culture. And as we talk about these things positively, sometimes talk about even the challenges, but our youth get to see this as, again, there's a journey for somebody out there. There's a journey that every individual will experience in their own, with their own experience. They're going to find that journey, but hopefully they're following that journey because it's positive for them. It gives them strength. Reconnection with their own community. So, Lawrence, this again was it's always fun, you and I chatting, right? There's always something. As much as you and I, and you give your regional reports and you give what's happening within our community, that part is the awareness. Where we're starting to bring that great positivity is with our guests and our humor when it comes to what's happening with our NHL franchises, our sports franchises, all of that. So Lawrence, every week I enjoy this.
No, I appreciate that, Ross. And, I always look at my regional reports, all the politics stuff. Well, really, at the end of the day, that's who paid for this podcast, and I have to acknowledge them and all the support I get from Métis Nation to do these sort of things. And who knows where the next level of this will go. And I'm open to things. That's kind of who I am. But I also want to, give credit to the Métis Nation for supporting this.
There's a lot of people behind the scenes, right? We have great sponsors. We have great moving forward. We have great our editing. This doesn't just all happen because you and I sit across the screen and look at each other. There's a lot that's going on there. So, folks, make sure you reach out to us. As always, you can email us tsw@métis3.org. Head to our website, métis3.org. You'll find more information. Thank you again to all of our guests. Make sure you look up Alex Kusturok. Make sure you continue to support us. When you get the opportunity and you're watching this on YouTube and you get to the little bottom, and there's a little spot there that says red and it says subscribe. That's important, folks. Make sure you click that button, because the more that listen, the more awareness that we get, the more we get to thank all of our community. And again, from the Squeaky Wheel, from the president, Lawrence Gervais, from myself, Ross Memphis Pambrun, with CEO of the Memphis Group, thank you again for all of us. Thank you for your time.